Welcome to the SJ Child Show, where a little bit of knowledge can turn fear into understanding. Enjoy the show. Thanks for joining the SJ Child Show today. I'm really excited to get into this conversation. Like-minded people are my tribe to be with, I'll tell you what. And it's always fun to have a conversation about neurodiversity, about, just making connections. And so without further ado, I'm so excited to have, I hope it's Genie. I didn't even make sure that I was pronouncing it correctly. Genie Love. And she is coming to us. Well, she's on Zoom, so you don't have to know. She's my neighbor in Colorado, but I'm excited that, that she is. But so happy to have you here today. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Yeah, it's going to be a great discussion. I want to learn more about what you do and, really dive deep and get some great ideas of what's been successful and what hasn't. It's always wonderful to learn from people's stories. You gain the most experience. Well, you can gain wisdom from other people's experiences, at least. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, thanks. Well, I my first degrees of this sort of winding path that I find myself on, I was a physical therapist, but I didn't really love. I moved to the Colorado mountains, which is why we're neighbors, and was living in a rural area, and I didn't really love the kind of physical therapy that's like sports injuries from skiing accidents and things like that. I was more interested in people who had had strokes and working in a rehab sort of facility like that, which you're not going to find in this rural ski area that I decided to live in. And so that path kind of led me to working in schools. I got hired as an aide to work with some pretty severely impacted students who had cerebral palsy or Down syndrome or sort of nonverbal autism kinds of things, and then other developmental disabilities. And my path stayed in public schools, public high school for about 15 years. And I worked with that type of student. And then after a certain period of time, I moved into working with students who are a little less severely impacted. And so that's where ADHD and a different type of autism kind of came into my life, as well as dyslexia and other learning disabilities. And it also led to the opportunity to live in South America and be a special education teacher there for a few years, which was really lovely for me and my family. And then 2020, COVID brought us home, and we were back in the United States and trying to figure out where our paths were going next, my husband and I. The same time, my 7-year-old daughter was really struggling with her own emotional regulation, which looking back on, we didn't understand, but has been with her whole life. And now at the age of 10, she has been diagnosed with ADHD. But at the time, we didn't really know. And that I thought that I wanted to be the very best mom that I could be for her. I have so much experience in supporting kids with behavioral needs. And so I wanted the time and the energy, and I just didn't think going back to public education was gonna allow the flexibility and the energy that I would want to be her mom. So then I started researching, what else can I do? I have this set of skills. What is out there? And so I started taking interviews and researching and figuring out what I was going to do. And I discovered that there's a growing number of adults who are getting a diagnosis or self-diagnosing with ADHD or autism. And I thought, well, this is something that I have a lot of experience with. I really enjoy working with people who have ADHD and or autism. So I thought I would see what would happen if I threw myself out there as a coach. And that's what I'm doing today. So I'm coaching professionals in the middle, figuring this out later in life in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and wanting to take action and move forward.
I love that. And you know what's fantastic is that we haven't ever met, just preface that for my listeners and such. And so Jeannie has no idea that just last May, I received my diagnosis that I was on the spectrum. also ADHD, anxiety, and dyslexia, which, is there a math dyslexia? That's what I have. So
There is.
that's what that is called. But yeah, it's so interesting because through that process, my entire family had already received their diagnosis. And in this decade of a journey with my son, who was impacted at a very young age, at 16 months old, and that's where I kind of started to learn and educate myself. And back then, it sounds kind of funny saying that, but there just wasn't as much information. There wasn't as much, there wasn't as many resources. There was certainly no one in my family that I could get any information or, it was, if anything, quiet, hush hush about anything that anybody has, and so it
Yeah.
really made it hard to accept it, hold on to it, love it at first, and say, oh, this is great. This is fantastic. This is what our life is going to be about. But that's what's happened. It's taken some time. But after that initial kind of process and then learning that, realizing that my husband was definitely on the spectrum, sharing that information with him. And then my daughter received hers through the school. We knew that she was dyslexic, and the teachers, and this is really interesting for you to have a perspective on, but the first and second grade teacher said, no, we're not going to test her. She's so bright. She's so far ahead of everything. Like, she always has been, like, emotionally intelligent. I swear she's like, 5 to 10 years older than herself in maturity. And it's always like, can you please catch this girl up with her? Because this age thing, just catch right up, please, to her real age. But still, the reading levels, and that was really, really hard to get a diagnosis, even though I could see her clearly writing backwards in front of me. And, with all due respect to her, I mean, now she's doing fantastic. But that those early signs of what that looks like, so much different. And then going back to myself, here I am, 40 in my 40s and years into my life, and I've achieved so many different types of things. And to then kind of bring it all together and realize how much my family belongs, how much we belong together, and
Yes.
how much we connect and can communicate with one another, which
Yes.
is really all what it's, you want to have in building a family and relationships. So it's so
Yes.
great that you had that prior experience and everything to then help your daughter. What did that look like in you trying to help reach out for help in your community?
Yes, it's incredibly, I'm sorry, there's like a bee that's kind of
Oh,
flying around. So if I'm
you're
looking
totally
at
fine.
it, yeah.
No worries.
It was my husband and I would look at each other and I would just be so confused. Like, we are a very typical family, and our daughter struggles so much more than other kids struggle. And it was just so confusing. Like, what are we doing wrong? I don't understand. Like, what, like, it's not like we're bad parents. We're
Yeah.
far from perfect, as we all are, but I just didn't get it. And it was not until I started coaching adults and they started telling me what was really going on in their brains and in their bodies. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what is going on with my daughter. This is exactly what's going on in her head and her body. And that's it. She's got ADHD. And so there's a few things. One is, with all my experience in education, I knew exactly what to do. I was like, okay, we go get an appointment with the doctor. We fill out the forms. The teachers fill out the forms. Okay, she's been diagnosed with ADHD. Now we take it to the school and we go, okay, we're ready for a plan. So, like, I was able to put some things into motion and then also start to teach her, and all of that is really lovely. But then there's this, like, so frustration that the school couldn't identify this. because she was in third grade at that time. And I think in third grade, isn't that where you really start to see the kids who are struggling, and
Yeah.
and you get together with your student support team and you start to like, let's start to figure out what's going on. And I just such disappointment, and I'm grateful that I have the information in the background and
Yeah.
this experience with these clients to be able to identify it, because I'm not sure when I was teaching high school students, high school is really about survival. It's about like, we got to get through this. You got all the work, you got all the sports, you got all the social life, and we got to keep going. And there's less of that like self reflection. And so I don't know that I would have gotten this
Yeah.
understanding, this depth of understanding, which I am able to use. So, I mean, I just feel very lucky to be
Yeah.
where I am and to able to support her.
That's great. And you can understand just as well as I that it doesn't mean even if you have all the knowledge in the world about this one thing and you're the biggest expert on everything, believe me, if you have children, they are going to do what they are going to do, and you are not responsible except you do not accept it, do not be accountable for it. They are individuals and they are still going to have their own journey, which is going to be a lot of falling down and a lot of getting back up. And it's so hard for us as these, pillars in this communities and things like this to say, but I have all this knowledge, but I have all this expertise, and I work with all these families and I help all these other kids. Why is my kid struggling? And it's so I
Yes.
completely understand that you look at yourself and say, what's happening here? What's going on? But it's also so wonderful that you're showing to other parents, hey, look at all the stuff we have and we don't get it either. Don't feel bad if you don't have all of this information and all of this experience and you don't get it. We're right there with you.
Oh man, you are so right on. It's first of all, it's trying to teach your children, right? They think that you just don't know anything. So there's that. And then on top of that, I mean, yes, oh my gosh,
You're so fine. I just hope it doesn't sting you.
I think we'll be okay. But yeah, and so then you're like, yes, I have all this experience, I have all this knowledge, and my kid's the one that's melting down and yelling at me after the school fair because she doesn't want to leave, and it's like, oh man, you gotta breathe through those times and know that it's not about you and it's not
Yes.
about anybody else around you. Like, this is them and their experience and your love for them. And it's hard.
Yeah, it is. And my husband has a great analogy. He says, as parents, we're the bow and the children are the arrow. And it doesn't matter how long or beautifully crafted either of us are and how much time is put into anything. But really, and this would be more for adult children, but when we release that arrow into the world, it goes where it goes. Anything can change that trajectory. Wind, rock, person, animal, you name it, plant, anything could get in the way. And it's not the fault of the bow. The bow had nothing to do with that at that point. And I love that you can look at that and really separate, where the child and the parent, and understand that yes, our world, the era that it is today, the social media, the internet, all of it is something we cannot comprehend as a 10-year-old going through that, as a 12-year-old, as a 15-year-old. We didn't have that available for us. So it's this whole new learning by just like they are falling down and getting back up.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I was talking about it even when she was so young and so willful and so strong, and which is beautiful. And we're like, she's going to be a beautiful, amazing woman, but raising her is going to be really hard. It's like I just feel like we're trying to turn a barge, you're just kind of like trying to steer her, but she's all you can do is just kind of like put your arms around her and be like, okay, let's head a little, or like moving sheep or something. Like, we're gonna head a little bit in this direction, because she's so strong and willful that she will make up her own mind, and all we can do is just like reflect and keep the
Yeah.
relationship open and have conversations and
Yeah.
help her to make good choices and be there when to support her when she makes bad choices and just steer. That's, I think, very
Exactly.
similar to your analogy.
Yeah. And, I think that I'm noticing a lot right now in the 11, 13-year-old age group that, and my 13-year-old is semi-verbal. Has much more challenging autism than his sister. And so doesn't fit into these conversations as much as, but we can kind of relate with the almost same age daughters that, and they sound very similar too, the very like strong and willful, but like incredible, and have so much potential. And it's almost like I've been starting to realize the more, and I'm on child number 3, so I think for me it may be a little bit easier. um, as far as letting go of that first child is so hard, but really just allowing her to take the lead. And a lot of people and parents and adults wouldn't don't understand or say that's crazy, you're not going to let the kid take the lead. But I have already set up a relationship with this individual that is trusting, loving, supportive, nurturing, open. I don't need to like of course we keep installing that through our example of who we need to be, but those things are already, I've already seen those things are who she is as a person. When she wants to make some decisions that might be outside of my comfort zone, those are for her to learn her natural consequences from. Like
Yes.
staying up all night, for example, like you want to stay up all night? Well, then in 3 days, when you haven't seen me and you're lonely and we haven't been able to hang out, you're probably going to go back to sleep at nighttime and wake up in the day. And
Yep.
those are fine things to be able to let them express themselves, let them get those bugs out or whatever, learn from those small things, And then when it comes to the bigger things like friends and bullying and social media, and you can have this source of like closeness with them, this connection that you've built to say, hey, these are some of the things that I hear that are going on, whatever, in social media right now or on YouTube right now. Let's talk about some things that you might be seeing. What are the things that, are there ads or videos that you don't like? What do those
Yes.
look like? Really opening up those discussions. Cause I love how you said that. It's all about that like discussion time with them.
Yeah, I think you have to be willing to hear some uncomfortable things. But I
Definitely.
know from my own, I mean, it was my own experience. I'm actually from Western Pennsylvania, so it's sort of the Midwest. I consider it to be, some rolling farmland. And we didn't have those conversations. I didn't have those conversations with my parents. And so I was left to my own devices to make all these stupid decisions and then look back and go, oh, geez, okay. I'm so grateful to be here. And so I was like, I'm not going to do that with my daughter. Like, we are going to have open conversations. And then I can't remember, one of those parenting books that maybe so many of us have read that was, allowing them to make the mistakes that are low risk now while they're still safe so that they can start to see the consequences of their behavior
Yeah.
and their choices and to seek guidance and to have that conversation with the family now before the stakes get higher and involve
Yeah.
cars and
Drinking
whatever
and
else they're going to get
yes.
into. Yeah, all of that. And so I do the same thing, where just kind of, oh, she got into the candy, and ate way too much one night right before bed and was just feeling so sick. And I didn't know. And she's got it squirreled away in her room. I didn't know. And so she's telling me about this the next day. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, what are we going to do about that then? And so those are just beautiful, like,
Yeah.
pros and cons decision making opportunities that I love having with her.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for parents to understand, and it took a long time for me to learn this, from, let's see, a decade or at least or so, maybe two, that the way you communicate with them should be as just humanly respectful as possible. And it gets so hard because they have their own will and their own attitude. And I think that we are conditioned from generations of conditioning to shut it down, to
Yes.
be the principle of the matter and everything. And we really, in our family, have to take a look at principle versus reality. What are we looking at here? Yes, I
Yes.
don't want you to leave your garbage everywhere. Yes, I don't want you to roll your eyes at me. Yes, all of these things. Realistically, you're a human being and something just annoyed you and you're expressing yourself. It's real. Everybody does it. You are lazy and you don't want to walk to the garbage to throw your things away, so you just leave them on your nightstand. It's human.
Right.
Everybody does it. But we as parents, from the conditioning, we want to shut it down, stifle it. Enough is enough. You act like this, you be like this. Then for my own experience, that breeds this, like, first of all, identity problems. Never being able to have your own decisions, make your own things, really cause like this crisis within yourself to not be able to have your own identity and, excuse me, really be able to have confidence that you can make mistakes and you can mess up and be honest with your parents and let them know about it. I think it's so special that we have that relationship, because I know in the past I didn't have that with my stepdaughter, and there was a lots of lessons learned. Let's just put it that way. Did things differently this
Yes.
time around.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. They have to discover who they are. And when you feel a little more confident in who you are, what your values are, because you've had time to trial and error all of that. I'm hopeful. I don't know. She's the only child that I have, but I'm hopeful that setting her on a better path in adolescence than maybe I had.
Yeah. And sometimes that's all we have to go off of is our own
Yeah.
experiences. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's a beautiful roller coaster journey, isn't it?
Yes, it
Roller
is.
coaster of life. Tell us what you're doing, in your coaching business and how that's going and things like that.
Yes. So I am working with adults who are discovering later in life that they have ADHD or autism or both. And most of my clients, a significant portion of my clients, are self-diagnosed because the diagnosis can be hard to find if you don't
Yeah.
live near a big city, and also expensive. But what I found just from the experience I have working with other adults and other high school students is that, in my opinion, they're usually pretty accurate in their self-diagnosis. And then it's this sort of beautiful, and maybe you kind of described this a little bit. It's like this, so happy to truly understand what's going on in their brain. So it's like this beautiful, like, okay, now I know who I am. I know who my people are, ready to take action. But then there can also be some grief, from some grieving of lost time, of all the years that they didn't really understand who they were, and struggle with school, and people didn't identify what was really going on. So there's this sort of the two things coming together. But what I love about it is that we're moving forward together. And my program has three sort of aspects to it. And it is not at all sort of a package, right? Everyone is different. Everybody's brains are different. Everybody's goals are different. So there's, some evidence-based tools, and we build a toolkit for executive functioning, specifically how to manage your time, how to how to manage your time, how to pay better attention, not procrastinate, shift between activities, those sorts
Mm.
of regulation.
Yeah.
Um, Emotional regulation, behavioral regulation, those are parts of it. I also have a lot of mindfulness in my program because I believe that in general, all of us, but specifically people who have ADHD and autism, brains are just really running very quickly or feeling very scattered. My clients will describe that there's a lot of noise going on inside of their heads. So we use a lot of mindfulness to get out of our brains and into our bodies and be more present throughout the day so that you have the power to make decisions and be less impulsive or reactive.
Mm.
And so we build a mindfulness program together and practice that throughout the day. And then the third aspect is mental fitness and positive emotional intelligence, because most people have tried a lot of things, as evidenced by our New Year's resolutions, which then fizzle away. And so I have this mental fitness program that helps you keep the techniques and the strategies that we've been building together and build new, more positive pathways in our brain, because we carry a lot of baggage from school specifically, but also early working lives. And how can we start to build more positive pathways in our brain to look at the circumstances around us, or how we treat ourselves, how we treat other people. And
Yeah.
so that's sort of the whole program. And then we just work together to figure out, what do you need, and start to build a little package that works for you.
And I was just thinking things like work accommodations, maybe helping someone understand what they need to ask for. Because I think
Yes.
that a lot of times in work situations, from me in the past, I suffered from migraines. And I can remember now times where if I maybe didn't have that lighting, I might have been not triggered and had a migraine and had to crawl under my desk or something. It was crazy.
Yes.
But now that I look back at it, I thought, oh man, I wish I would have known. I could have said, hey, I need to be in another office. I need to be with one next to sunlight instead of this harsh, light above me. And so I think those are some really great things we can help adults navigate ways, and like you said, kind of build a toolbox of ways that they can help themselves.
Yes, because you don't even know until we start. You might not even know like what your triggers are. You don't know that it's the light. You have no idea until we start to talk about, okay, yeah, the sensory regulation. How do sounds impact you? How do smells impact you? Or the clothes that you're wearing, or the fluorescent lighting, and
Yeah.
the chair that you're sitting on, the need for movement or standing,
Mm.
all, or how do
So important.
interruptions affect your ability to continue working. And so we can start to figure out what they need and then help them to advocate for what will better
Yeah.
support them at work.
Fantastic. Well, I just love what you're doing out there. And I'm so grateful that, Colorado has someone like you to help those that are there to, get the guidance and support. And, it's always nice to just have someone who understands what you're going through. So that's great.
Yes. And let me say that I'm working with clients all over the world. I work through Zoom.
Wonderful.
Um, I do have some clients I meet in person because they're nearby, but I've found that I've been able to do my work through Zoom. And so
Love it.
that way I can support anybody anywhere.
I love
It's
that.
great.
Tell us where to go to find you, your websites, things like that.
My website is genielove.coach, GENIELOVE.coach. You can look me up there. I have free introductory calls with anyone. So if you just want to
Nice.
chat with me about your specific needs or goals, feel free to book a call on there. You can also, my social media is LinkedIn. That's where I prefer to spend my time. So you can find me on there and send me a message, or we can connect. I have a free tool that is very mindfulness based on LinkedIn, where it's how to kind of calm and quiet your mind. So you can find that there on LinkedIn and sign up for my newsletter. And
Great.
yeah, those are the best ways to find me.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. That's fantastic. Please go and support her. Go to the website, go to LinkedIn and connect and take part of these tools that we're bringing you these wonderful resources for. So it was such a pleasure to get to know you today. I hope we could stay in touch and check back in with each other. I mean, maybe pass through, Utah or Colorado one of these days.
Yeah, that would be great. We could have a
Absolutely.
conversation in person.
Absolutely. I would love that. Well, it's just been so much fun having you on the show today. And yeah, I'm excited to see what you have going on in the future, how it goes.
Thank you. Nice to
Thanks
talk
so
to you
much.
too.